Welcome back, guys. This time I'm going to be doing a video on the 20 of the worst Canadian serial killers. Alright? Now, some of these you're going to find that were in the last video, like Bernardo and Homolka. So, some of them that were in the last video are in this one because they are part of the worst Canadian serial killers. So let's get into this countdown. Let's go. Oh, did you think Canada was the land of politeness? Saying sorry and that nothing ever bad happened there? Clearly, you need to stop making sweeping generalizations. You're dead wrong. Canada is a great place to live, but it also has its fair share of terrible crimes. Yes, even serial killers. Wait. But what's a serial killer? Just someone who kills a lot of people, right? Wrong. A serial killer is defined as someone who kills more than 3 people, but with a cooling off period between each killing. But some definitions also define this type of individual as someone who's killed 2 or more persons in separate events. Regardless of the definition, we can agree on one thing. These people sure are terrifying and completely insane and nuts. Let's get into it. Number 20, Scott William Cox. Okay. So this first guy on our list isn't technically Canadian, but he was a long-haul trucker who did travel Canada, and he's a suspect in several Canadian murders. The serial killer murdered sex workers as he traveled long distances on stretches of highway in his truck. He confessed to murdering women in the United States as well as in Canada. It's estimated that Cox killed upwards around 20 women during the 1980s. Cox was arrested in 1991 and charged with 2 counts of murder. He was sent to prison to serve a 25-year sentence in Oregon for the murders of Rena Ann Brunson and Victoria Roan. In 2013, Cox was released with the company of a GPS tracking device. Number 19, Paul Bernardo and his wife, Carla Homolka, committed a series of murders together, dubbed the Schoolgirl Murderers. Before the killings, Bernardo was a serial rapist and was given the name the Scarborough Rapist. The couple even murdered Carla's younger sister, Tammy. Now, there are pictures online of Tammy in the morgue. It's not blood on her face. Carla burnt Tammy's face. Think about that as we move on into the story. The plan was to drug her so that Bernardo could rape the young girl. Her official cause of death was asphyxiation due to her choking on her own vomit. When the two were arrested, Homolka received a reduced sentence in exchange for her testimony against Bernardo. She claimed that Bernardo abused her and forced her to participate in the awful killings. Bernardo was sentenced to life as a dangerous offender. He'll likely never get out of prison. In 2005, Homolka was released from prison. Yeah, now she's living in Quebec under a different name. Wayne Bowden was a Canadian serial killer who was dubbed the Vampire Rapist. The Montreal native was young and charismatic, which helped him get the attention from the women. He was known to leave bite marks on his female victims, and he had a particular fascination with women's breasts. His victims were left with savage bite marks on their breasts, which earned Bowden his nickname. He raped and strangled 4 women to death before being caught in 1971. At his trial, bite marks were the key piece of evidence. He was sentenced to a total of 4 life sentences and thankfully never got out. He died in prison in 2006. And number 17, John Martin Crawford. Likely to their delight, many serial killers get nicknames. John Martin Crawford's nickname is the Lady Killer. In 1981, Crawford was actually arrested for killing Mary Jane Sirloin. Because he agreed to a guilty plea, his sentence was reduced from first-degree murder down to manslaughter. He was released in 1989 and went on to commit a series of rapes and murders. He would stab and strangle his victims. 4 murders have been attributed to him, and it's likely the number is higher. At the time of Crawford's trial, Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka's case was generating a lot of immediate media attention. It's thought by some that Crawford's killings didn't get the same media attention because his victims were First Nations women. And now, number 16, Leopold Dion. Leopold Dion is another killer from the province of Quebec. He was dubbed the Monster of Pont Rouge. Hope I got that right. He was active During the 60s, Dion was a sexual predator who preyed on young pre-teen boys. He would pretend to be a photographer and gain their trust. The trust of the victims he was going to kill. He raped over a dozen victims, including women. He would suffocate his victims by either strangling them or smothering them. During his trial, he was defended and ended up being only convicted for a single murder instead of 4. His death sentence was commuted to a sentence of life in prison, and he met his end in 1972 when he was stabbed to death by another inmate. And number 15 on our list is William Patrick Fife. William Patrick Fife is another murderer who committed his kills in the province of Quebec. We're sensing a pattern here. Last one was in Quebec. Fife is also known as the Killer Handyman. He was found guilty of murdering 4 women, but confessed to killing an additional 5 others. His general pattern was to rape, murder, and rob his female victims. Now, how was he eventually caught, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. A single fingerprint. It seems that at some point, most killers are going to get overconfident and become sloppy. Thankfully, the same is true of Fife. He was put away for life, but not in prison. Oh no. They had a better place for him. Fife is serving a life sentence in a psychiatric institution where he will never get out. And number 14, Gilbert Paul Jordan. This guy was on my last video. So was Paul Bernardo. This is the boozing barber. Let's get into it. Gilbert Paul Jordan was nicknamed the Boozing Barber. He's been linked to the deaths of 10 women between 1965 and 1987. Jordan used a particularly strange method of murder. Alcohol was his weapon of choice. He would find a sex worker, usually First Nations woman, get them to drink with him. Jordan would convince the woman to keep drinking until they would lose consciousness. Yeah, they would just pass out. Once they passed out, Jordan would continue to pour alcohol down their throats, leading to their demise. Yeah, they died of alcohol poisoning, guys. To the police, the deaths were of little importance. It seemed that the victims had simply died of alcohol poisoning. Jordan spent a mere 5 years in prison and was released in 1994. Don't have to worry about him though. He died in 2006. Okay, and here's number 13. I'll put the name on the screen there, guys. I can't pronounce that last name, so I'm not even going to try. Alright, let's get into it. Cody is one of the more recent convicted serial killers on the list. He's also the youngest. Cody was convicted for murdering a total of 3 women. and one teen girl. He committed his crimes in the Canadian province of British Columbia. He was arrested in 2010 after an RCMP officer pulled him over for speeding. The officer started to suspect something was not quite right with the young man. The officer noticed blood in the vehicle and on Cody. Although throughout his trial, he denied ever actually committing the murders. And shockingly, his defense didn't convince anyone. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. He'll be eligible for parole in 2035, which probably won't happen. And in our number 12 spot, we have Alan Ledger. And in number 12 spot, Alan Joseph Ledger is another serial killer with a nickname. He's being called the monster of the Miramichi. He was convicted in the murder of John Glendenning and was sentenced to life in prison. In 1989, Ledger escaped custody and became an escaped convict. He was also able to evade capture for a total of 7 months. During that time, he went on to murder 4 more people. He also committed arson and perpetrated several rapes. Ledger was recaptured in late 1989 and charged for the murders and crimes he committed while temporarily free. He's currently serving a life sentence in a maximum security facility in Quebec. Number 11, Michael Wayne McGray. Michael Wayne McGray committed a series of murders across Canada. He's been linked to a total of 6 killings, but claims to have committed up to 16. McGray's claim was that his demons made him commit the brutal stabbing murders. McGray was a drifter, received multiple life sentences for the senseless acts he committed. He's offered to provide details regarding his other supposed killings, but only in exchange for some kind of a deal. The authorities have refused to provide McGray any kind of a deal. And they went on to say, "We won't cut a deal with this monster, even if it's giving him a better pillow." And number 10, Clifford Robert Olson. And no, he's not one of the Olson twins. Now, you don't have to worry about this terrifying monster getting out of prison. He's already dead. Clifford Robert Olson died in prison in 2011. He was nicknamed the Beast of British Columbia. When young boys and girls started to go missing around the city of Vancouver in 1980, police honed in on Olson as one of their prime suspects. Eventually, Olson was arrested and sentenced to life in prison. Before pleading guilty, Olson managed to swindle the authorities by getting them to pay hefty sums of money for helping locate each of his victims' bodies. Olson was convicted of 11 murders, but it's likely he committed more. And number 9, Robert Picton, the stinky old pig farmer. Robert Picton is the famous pig farming serial killer from British Columbia. Picton would lure sex workers back to his large farm property where he would rape them and murder them. He chose to either strangle them with thin wire or just shoot them. He also dismembered his victims, ground them up, and fed them to his pigs. It's believed that he killed up to 49 women. He's one of the worst known serial killers in Canada. He was convicted in 2007 on 6 counts of second-degree murder. Another 20 first-degree murder charges were stated in 2010. He was sentenced to life in prison, and we hope he never sees the light of day. And number 8. Yeah, you can go ahead and laugh at the last name of this guy, because I did. Peter Woodcock. Yeah, I had a good laugh at that one. Peter Woodcock raped and murdered 3 young children during the late 50s in Toronto, Ontario. At the time of the vicious crimes, he was still a teen himself. He raped and murdered Wayne Machete, Gary Morris, and Carol Voice. He was caught in 1957 and placed in a psychiatric institution. In 1982, Woodcock decided to change his name. Well, the name Woodcock, I would too. He changed it to David Michael Kruger. While in custody at the Brookville Institution, Woodcock used a knife and hatchet to murder Dennis Kerr, a fellow patient at the facility, with the help of a former patient, Bruce Hamill. In 2010, Woodcock died while still housed in the institution. Number 7, Russell Maurice Johnson. This one was known as the Bedroom Strangler. Russell Maurice Johnson was active during the 1970s. He was a serial rapist that ended up murdering several women. He was charged with the murders of 3 women, but ended up being found not guilty by reason of insanity. Despite the charge of not guilty, Johnson was still locked up in a mental institution. Since his incarceration, he's claimed he had committed more murders and a number of other sexual assaults. He was known to stalk his victims. And if that's not creepy enough, he apparently even watched them while they slept. Number 6, Gerald Thompson Archer. Gerald Thompson Archer was a serial killer that was active from 1969 to 1971. He committed his murders in the city of London, Ontario. He was nicknamed the London Chambermaid Slayer. because he targeted victims that were women who worked in hotels, cleaning the rooms, making the beds. Hard to get a good job nowadays, isn't it? After sexually assaulting his victims, he would then proceed to beat and stab them to death. Archer was arrested in 1971 and was sentenced to life in prison. In 1985, though, he was paroled and was able to walk free. We can only hope he didn't commit more murders during this time as a free man. In 1985, he died of a heart attack. Number 5. Christian Herbert McGee. Christian Herbert McGee's nickname is the Mad Slasher. He was active during the late 1970s. McGee raped and killed 3 women during that time period. He was arrested in 1976 for the brutal sexual assaults and killings of Judith Barksey, Patricia Jenner, and Susan Lynn Scholes, all young girls under the age of 20. In 1977, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. In 2006, McGee petitioned to be transferred to a less secure facility in Toronto's downtown core. Thankfully, his bid was denied. He remains at the maximum security institution called Penetangushin Mental Health Center. We hope he stays there until he dies. Number 4. Clayton Bowen Eichler. Clayton Bowen Eichler is the first known serial killer to have prowled the city of Regina. He's one of the more recent convicted monsters on the list. Instead of going through a potentially long, drawn-out trial, Clayton pleaded guilty to the 2 charges he was accused of committing. One victim was Kelly Nicole Goforth, was killed and left in a dumpster. The other, Rochelle Lee Bear, she was never found. In September 2016, Clayton was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the first 20 years of his sentence. Apparently, Clayton sobbed at his sentencing appearance. You're right. You're sorry. There's a bunch of BS. And number 3 on our list is Mark Twitcho. Okay, this guy's not a serial killer. I don't even know why he's on here. The top 20. This murder is actually pretty unique. He compared himself to a fictional television character, Dexter Morgan. This scored him the nickname of Dexter Copycat Killer. He's the only one on this list who only has 1 kill to his name. So he's technically not a serial killer. Still, he's compared himself to one, and it seems clear that if he hadn't been arrested, he'd have gone on to commit more murders or dream about it. Mark was also charged with attempted murder, Mark would lure men using the online dating website, plentyoffish.com. And when the men arrived for their supposed date, Mark would ambush them. Number 2, Russell Williams. Alright guys, here's a real winner for you. As you'll see in the pictures, David Russell Williams is one of the most despicable serial killers on the list. Although it's hard to rank these evil people in terms of most awful or most weird, like you see in here, they're really all in the same ballpark. Russell Williams was formerly part of the Canadian Forces, serving as a colonel at Base Trenton. In 2010, he was arrested and charged for his crimes. We've listened to his confession tape, and it's pretty tough to listen to. His crimes are vile, and thinking about what his victims went through is heartbreaking. He beat one of his victims and suffocated her to death. Yeah, it looks like he put her clothes on afterwards too. He also filmed many of his acts he committed and tortured his victims. Williams also committed numerous break-ins and would do disturbing things in the homes he entered unseen. And our number 1 spot, the real wiener of them all, Elizabeth Wetlaufer. Elizabeth Wetlaufer is the only woman on this list. She's also the only person on this list who has yet to be convicted of all the murders she's accused of committing. The former nurse stands accused of killing a total of 8 elderly patients. That's right, I said patients. She was a nurse. Over a span of 7 years. The 49-year-old woman was arrested in 2016 and is accused of delivering fatal amounts of a certain drug to her patients. It's shocking to think that she was potentially able to commit these killings without anyone noticing for such a long period of time. The most recent update surrounding the Wetlaufer case occurred in April, when it was revealed that the case would go straight to trial. Well, the case was monitored. She did go to trial. She was charged with all the deaths. And she's got free room board, free meals at the local Crowbar Hotel. She's in prison. Anyways, that's it, guys. Top 20. Hey, guys. Now, with what you just seen was 20 of the worst Canadian serial killers. I know some of them looked and sound like a clown act. Well, maybe they are. They can do the clown act in prison. But yeah, if you want some more like this, get down there and subscribe and hit the bell. Alright? I'm going to be trying to dig up some more for you. Especially that one guy. The one guy's last name. Oh, which one? Let's see here. You know, that young guy, young dude with the glasses. What was his name? There you go. Woodcock. I never laughed so hard in my life when I seen that last name. I don't blame him for changing that last name. I would too. It'd be embarrassing going through life with the last name Woodcock. Come on. No wonder he didn't get any dates. The girls be scared of getting slivers. Anyways, like, share, and subscribe, guys. I'm out of here. Gonna start on the next one for you. Later. Gone.